The fishing boat was taking on water faster than William Easton could bail it out, and the last thing he expected to see through the dawn mist was an orc woman wading toward him with a bucket of her own. "Scoot over," she said, not asking, already grabbing the side of the skiff with one green hand while the other held a dented pail filled with what looked like fresh-caught perch. William stared at her, his own wooden scoop frozen mid-bail. "This is a one-person boat. I can see that." She hoisted herself up with surprising grace for someone her size, which was not particularly large for an orc, he realized, maybe 5.5 feet, but solid muscle packed into a frame that made the little vessel groan and list dangerously to starboard. Water sloshed over the edge. "Wait, wait." William threw his weight to port, and the boat rocked wildly before settling into a precarious equilibrium, the gunwale now riding perhaps an inch above the waterline. "Are you insane? We are going to sink." The orc woman settled herself on the narrow plank across from him, her knees nearly touching his in the cramped space. She had dark hair pulled back in a thick braid, small tusks that barely protruded past her upper lip, and eyes the color of amber in sunlight. She set her bucket carefully between her boots and picked up the extra paddle that had been lying in the bottom of the boat. "Then we should probably head toward shore," she said reasonably. "Which shore do you prefer?" William looked back toward the human settlement of Millbank, a quarter-mile behind him, then toward the orc village of Stonewater on the opposite bank, equally distant. The lake stretched gray and endless in the morning fog, and his pathetic boat sat exactly in the middle like a waterlogged cork. "I was here first," he said, "and I have fish." She gestured at her bucket. "Also, I am already in the boat, so unless you plan to throw me out, the question is not whether I stay but where we go." He opened his mouth, closed it, then laughed despite himself. The sound surprised him. It had been weeks since he had found anything genuinely funny. "You have a point. I often do." She dipped her paddle into the water on one side. "I am Ragna Zeller, William Easton." He matched her stroke on his side, and the boat crept forward, still perilously low in the water. "Why did you get in my boat, Ragna?" "I was checking my nets before dawn and saw you circling out here, bailing water. You have been circling for 20 minutes. She paddled with efficient strokes that suggested familiarity with boats, even if not with ones this small. "I thought you might need help, so you made the boat heavier. I made it have 2 people working instead of 1. She nodded at the water pooled around their feet. "Keep bailing while I paddle. We will take turns." It was absurd. It was completely illogical. And yet William found himself scooping water and dumping it over the side while Ragna paddled, her movements smooth and practiced. The boat moved toward the human shore because that was marginally closer, and because neither of them said otherwise. "This boat is a disaster," Ragna observed after a few minutes. "How long have you had it?" "It was my father's. He built it 30 years ago." William scooped faster, but the water kept seeping in through a dozen small gaps in the hull. It was not this bad when he used it. 30 years is a long time for a boat. Ragna shipped her paddle and took the scoop from him, nodding for him to paddle instead. They switched roles without discussion, falling into a rhythm. "Your father, he does not fish anymore. He drowned 3 months ago." The words came out flat, and William focused on paddling, on the bite of water against wood, on anything except the memory of the empty boat floating back to shore. Ragna was quiet for a long moment, bailing steadily. "I am sorry. Everyone is sorry." He had not meant to sound bitter, but there it was. Sorry does not fix anything. "No," she agreed, "but this boat definitely needs fixing. You are going to sink and drown like your father if you keep taking it out like this." The bluntness should have angered him, but instead it was almost a relief. Everyone else in Millbank tiptoed around the subject. offering casseroles and condolences and carefully not mentioning the lake. "I need to fish," William said. "The garden gives enough to eat, but I need money for winter supplies, for seeds for spring. Fish are the only thing I know how to sell." "Then you need a boat that floats." Ragna dumped another scoop over the side. "This one is trying very hard to become a submarine." Despite everything, William smiled. "Submarines are supposed to come back up. Then this is trying to be a rock." She handed him back the scoop as they approached the shallows near Millbank's fishing docks. "My turn to paddle." They made it to shore with the water nearly to the tops of their boots. When the hull scraped sand, both of them sat there for a moment, not quite believing they had made it. Then Ragna climbed out, the boat rising noticeably with her weight gone, and offered William her hand. He hesitated only a second before taking it. Her palm was calloused, her grip strong and warm. "Tomorrow morning," Ragna said, pulling him onto dry land. "Same time, we will fish together. In this boat, we will die. Then we will die having an interesting morning." She picked up her bucket of fish and started walking up the shore toward the path that led around the lake to Stonewater. Then she paused and looked back. "Bring more rope tomorrow. We can at least tie the worst gaps closed." William watched her go, this strange orc woman who had climbed into his sinking boat and turned his lonely morning into something else entirely. Around him, the early fishermen of Millbank were beginning to emerge from their homes, and he could see the looks, the whispers starting already. Let them talk, he thought. At least today he had a reason to smile. The next morning, William was there before dawn with rope, tar, and a stubborn determination to see if Ragna had been serious. The lake was calm, the mist hanging low over the water, and his boat was already bailed out and floating when she appeared. She had brought tools, a small hammer, nails, some scraps of thin planking. "I told you I would come. I thought you might reconsider after a night of dry sleeping." William helped her load the supplies, and once again she climbed in with that matter-of-fact confidence that made the boat's protests seem irrelevant. Once again, they settled into their precarious balance, water an inch from disaster. "Where do you want to fish?" Ragna asked. "The North Cove is usually good in the mornings. Deep water, lots of shad and perch. Then we go to the North Cove." She started paddling, and he joined her, and the absurd little boat crept across the lake as the sun began to burn through the mist. They worked on the boat while they fished. Ragna showed him how to hammer small wedges of wood into the worst gaps, then seal them with tar. William showed her where his father had marked the good fishing spots with landmarks, a dead tree on the eastern shore, lined up with a particular peak in the western hills, meant deep water and big pike. "You know this lake well," Ragna said, baiting a hook with practiced efficiency. "I grew up on it. My father took me out as soon as I could hold a paddle." William cast his line toward a promising shadow in the water. "What about you? Stonewater is a fishing village." "It is." Ragna's line sailed out to almost exactly the same spot his had. "But my family came from the inland territories. We are farmers mostly. I learned to fish here." "Do you like it?" She considered the question seriously. "I like the quiet. I like that the lake does not care if you are human or orc. It treats everyone the same. Mostly I like bringing home food that I caught myself." They fished in comfortable silence for a while. The boat still took on water, but slower now with the repairs. William found himself relaxing in a way he had not since his father's death, the simple rhythm of cast and weight and reel soothing something raw inside him. "Why did you really get in my boat?" he asked eventually. Ragna pulled in her line, checked the bait, cast out again. "I told you. You needed help. You did not know me. For all you knew, I was sitting out here because I wanted to be alone." "Were you?" William thought about it. "I do not know any more. I have been alone a lot lately." "So have I." Ragna's line twitched, and she set the hook with a sharp tug, reeling in a fat perch that gleamed silver in the growing light. Everyone in Stonewater is kind to me, but they know I am different. I farm when I should fish. I live alone when I should have a family. I wade out to strange human men in sinking boats when I should mind my business. Are you sorry you waded out? Are you sorry you scooted over? William grinned. No. Then we are both foolish together. She unhooked the perch and dropped it in the bucket between them. Which is less lonely than being foolish alone. By the time they paddled back to Shore Millbank again, by unspoken agreement, they had caught enough fish to make the trip worthwhile. They split the catch exactly in half, and when William tried to give her more because she had supplied the better tackle, she refused. Partners split even, she said. Tomorrow. He watched her walk away again, and again he saw the stares from the other fishermen, heard the muttering. But he also saw his bucket of fish, more than he had caught alone in weeks, and he thought about how the morning had felt with someone else in the boat, even a boat that barely floated. The days fell into a pattern. Dawn at the lake, Ragna wading out or already waiting, the boat settling low under their combined weight. They fished the coves and shallows, traded stories and silence, slowly repaired the worst of the leaks until the boat merely leaked instead of actively sinking. "Why do you not just get a bigger boat?" Ragna asked one morning, 2 weeks into their arrangement. "Because I cannot afford one." William pulled in an empty line and rebated. "A good fishing boat costs more than I make in a season, even with our catches. And no one will sell me my father's old boat. It was sold to pay his debts after he died. What about building one? I am not a boatwright. My father was, but he never taught me the skill. He was going to after I finished my apprenticeship with the blacksmith, but then he trailed off." "Then the lake took him," Ragna finished quietly. "The lake takes many people, 3 from Stonewater in the last 5 years. William looked at her, really looked, and saw something in the set of her shoulders, the way she always kept one hand on the boat's edge. "You are afraid of the water." "I am not afraid." The words came too quickly. "I respect it. There is a difference. You grip the boat like it might disappear if you let go. Because boats sink, William, your boat especially." But her jaw was tight, her amber eyes fixed on the distant shore. "Can you swim?" Ragna's silence was answer enough. "Ragna, we are out on this lake every morning in a boat held together with hope and tar, and you cannot swim. I can swim enough to reach shore from here." She gestured at the water around them, which was currently about 30 feet deep. "Probably. If the water is calm, probably. I have not tested it thoroughly." She said it with such dignity that William could not help but laugh, and after a moment she laughed too, shaking her head. "I know it is stupid. But in the inland territories, there is no water deep enough to drown in unless you try very hard. By the time my family moved to Stonewater, I was already grown, and the idea of putting my face in the water and trusting it to hold me up seemed—" She shrugged. "Impossible." William shipped his paddle and faced her fully in the cramped boat. "I could teach you. Teach me to swim. My father taught me when I was 5. The lake was his whole life. He always said anyone who spent time on it should know how to survive in it." The memory was painful but also warm, precious. "I could teach you the way he taught me." Ragna was quiet for a long time, her hand tight on the boat's edge. "What if I am too afraid?" "Then we will go slowly." "But Ragna, if you are getting in this boat every day anyway, you should know how to swim." "For your own sake," she nodded slowly. "When?" "Afternoons. The water is warmer and there are fewer people around. We can use the cove where the creek comes in. It is shallow and calm. Just you and me, just us. I promise I will not let you drown." Ragna met his eyes, and something passed between them that felt like more than just an agreement about swimming lessons. "Then I will try." That afternoon, William waited at the cove, wondering if she would actually come. The sun was high and warm, and the creek-fed water was clear over a sandy bottom that sloped gently from ankle-deep to waist-deep over 20 feet. He was about to give up when Ragna appeared through the trees, wearing a simple tunic and leggings that she clearly did not mind getting wet. She looked nervous, which was so unlike her usual confidence that William felt a surge of tenderness. "You came. I said I would." She stopped at the water's edge, staring at the gentle ripples like they might rise up and attack her. "Where do we start?" "Here." William waded in until the water was knee-deep and held out his hand. "Just walk in with me. Get used to how it feels." Ragna took his hand and stepped into the lake. Her fingers tightened around his as the water rose to her knees, then her thighs. When it reached her waist, she stopped. "This is already deeper than I like. I know, but you are safe. I am right here and you can stand easily. Do you feel the bottom?" "Yes." "Then you are in control. The water is not doing anything to you. You are choosing to be in it." He squeezed her hand gently. "Now I want you to squat down until the water reaches your shoulders. Keep your feet on the bottom." She did slowly, her breathing quick and shallow. When the water lapped at her chin, she stopped. "This is enough. This is perfect. Just stay here for a minute. Feel how the water holds you up a little, how you weigh less in water than on land." Gradually, Ragna's breathing slowed. Her grip on his hand loosened slightly. "It is not as cold as I thought. The creek warms this part. Now stand up." She stood, water streaming down her green skin, and she was grinning. That was not so terrible. That was the first step. William smiled back. "Tomorrow we will practice floating." Over the next week the pattern expanded. Mornings fishing in the barely floating boat, afternoons in the cove with swimming lessons. William was patient, never pushing, letting Ragna set the pace. She learned to float on her back with his hand supporting her, learned to blow bubbles underwater, learned to kick and pull herself through the shallows. "You are a good teacher," she said one afternoon, treading water in chest-deep water while William floated nearby. "Patient." "You are a good student, determined." "I am terrified," she admitted, "every time, but I come anyway. That is what bravery is." William righted himself, standing on the sandy bottom, doing the thing even though you are afraid. Ragna actually swam, with strokes that were getting stronger each day to where she could stand as well. They were close together in the water, close enough that he could see the droplets caught in her eyelashes, the way her wet hair stuck to her green skin. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. "The fishing, I understand we both need the income, but this teaching me, spending your afternoons here. Why?" William wanted to say something light, deflect with humor, but the question deserved honesty. "Because being with you makes me feel less alone. Because you climbed into my sinking boat without hesitation, and that meant something. Because I like you, Ragna." She studied his face, her amber eyes serious. "I like you too, more than I expected to like anyone, especially a human." "Is that a problem in Stonewater?" "Yes." She did not elaborate and he did not push. "Is it a problem in Millbank?" "Also yes." He had heard the comments from the other fishermen, the disapproval from his neighbors. His father's old friend Marcus had pulled him aside last week and warned him that associating with orcs would ruin his reputation. "But I do not care as much as I probably should." "We are both fools then. Better to be a fool with company than wise and alone." William surprised himself by reaching out to brush a strand of wet hair from her face. Ragna leaned into the touch, just slightly, and the moment stretched between them like the surface of the lake, smooth and full of hidden depths. Then a voice called from the shore. "Ragna, there you are." They stepped apart quickly. A younger orc man stood at the water's edge, looking annoyed. He had the same green skin and tusks, though his were slightly larger than Ragna's, and he wore the leather apron of a craftsman. "My brother," Ragna said quietly to William, then louder. "Rolf, what do you need? Mother wants you home. The evening meal is soon, and you missed the afternoon chores again." Rolf's eyes moved from Ragna to William and back, his expression darkening. "What are you doing out here with a human?" "Learning to swim. William is teaching me." "Why, so you can spend even more time on this cursed lake?" Rolf waded in, not caring that his boots and leggings were getting soaked. And with him, "Ragna, people are talking. Let them talk." But Ragna's voice was tired, and William could see this was not the first time they had had this conversation. "I will be home soon." "Now," Mother said, "she is worried about you." Rolf glared at William. "Stay away from my sister, human. Nothing good comes from this." He turned and stalked back through the trees. Ragna sighed deeply. "I am sorry. Rolf means well, but he is overprotective. You do not have to apologize for him." William wanted to reach for her hand but was not sure if he should. "Is your family very against us spending time together?" "My mother worries. My father is dead, so he does not have opinions anymore, but I think he would have worried too." Ragna waded toward the shore, and William followed. They came to Stonewater to escape prejudice in the inland territories. There are humans there who consider orcs property, not people. So they see all humans as potential threats. "I would never hurt you, I know, but they do not know that." She wrung out her braid, water streaming onto the sand. "I should go before Rolf comes back with reinforcements. Same time tomorrow morning. For fishing." Ragna hesitated, and fear shot through William's chest. Then she nodded. "Same time. I do not abandon my partners just because my brother has opinions." She left, and William sat on the shore for a long time, watching the sun move lower in the sky. The lake was beautiful in this light, gold and amber, the same colors as Ragna's eyes. His father had loved these quiet moments, had often said the lake gave more than it took if you respected it. But it had taken his father anyway. And now, William was out on it every day in a patched boat with an orc woman he was starting to care for more than was probably wise, teaching her to swim when she was terrified of the water, splitting fish and stories, and something that felt dangerously close to his heart. He should probably stop. That would be the sensible thing. But when had he ever been sensible about the lake? The mornings continued despite the warnings from both shores. William and Ragna fished together, and their catches stayed good even as the season turned toward autumn and other fishermen reported dwindling hauls. They had learned each other's rhythms so well that they could paddle in sync without speaking, could cast to the same promising spots without tangling lines. "We are getting better at this," Ragna said one misty morning, reeling in a nice base. "We should think about a real partnership." "We have a partnership. I mean official. Something recognized so we can sell the fish together, split the profits legally." She added the base to their bucket. "The merchant who buys my catch has asked if I can supply more. If we pool our fish, we could negotiate a better price." William had been thinking the same thing but had not wanted to suggest it, unsure if Ragna would want to formalize an arrangement that already had both their communities talking. "Would that cause more problems for you in Stonewater?" "Probably." "But William, I am 23 years old, I live in my own house that I built myself, and I make my own money. My family can have opinions, but they cannot control my life." She met his eyes across the boat. "Unless you think it would cause too many problems for you." "Half of Millbank already thinks I am strange for fishing with you. Might as well make it official and profit from it." He grinned. "Partner." They shook on it, and the deal was made, but formalizing their partnership meant going to the village councils, which meant facing the disapproval head-on. William went to Millbank's council first, a group of 5 elders who met in the back room of the general store. Marcus, his father's old friend and the head councilman, listened to William's proposal with a deepening frown. You want the council to recognize a business partnership between you and an orc from Stonewater. Yes, we have been fishing together for 2 months. Our combined catches are good and we want to sell together to get better prices. William. Marcus leaned forward, his weathered face concerned. I know you have been lonely since your father passed, but this is not the way. Orcs are not like us, they do not think like us, do not value the same things. Business with them always ends badly. Ragna is honest and hardworking. She is a better fishing partner than any human who has offered. Has anyone offered? Another council member, a woman named Helen, asked pointedly. Because from what I hear, you spend all your time with that orc girl and have not tried to find a human partner. I do not want a human partner. I want to continue working with Ragna, and I want it recognized so we can operate legally. The council exchanged glances. Finally, Marcus sighed. The law does not forbid partnerships between humans and orcs. We cannot stop you, but do not expect the community to support it, William. And when this goes wrong, as it will, do not come crying to us. It was not an approval, but it was not a denial. William took it and left before they could say worse. Ragna had a similar experience in Stonewater. When she told him about it the next morning, she was angry in a way he had not seen before. They lectured me for an hour about the dangers of trusting humans. My Uncle Gregor actually said that you were probably courting me to humiliate me, that it was some kind of cruel game humans play. She paddled hard enough to make the boat rock, as if I am too stupid to know my own mind. I am not playing games with you, I know that, but they do not. She took a breath, visibly calming herself. They approved the partnership, but only because my mother argued that at least a formal arrangement meant there were legal protections if you cheated me. Which you are not going to do, but she does not believe that. They sat in the boat, both frustrated, the morning's fishing forgotten for the moment. We could stop, William offered, though the words felt like pulling out his own teeth. If this is causing too much trouble for you, no. Ragna's voice was firm. I am not stopping because other people are afraid of something different. We are good partners, William. We work well together, and beyond that. She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. I value you as a friend. As someone who sees me as Ragna, not as the orc girl or the strange one. I am not giving that up. William's heart did something complicated in his chest. I value you too, more than I probably should say out loud. Their eyes met, and the boat seemed even smaller than usual, the space between them charged with everything they were not quite saying. We should fish, Ragna said finally, but she was smiling. We should, William agreed, smiling back. They fished, and the morning was good, and when they returned to shore the stares and whispers seemed a little less important than before. But the trouble from their communities was nothing compared to what came with the autumn storms. The season had been poor for fishing overall. The lake's levels were lower than usual due to a dry summer, and the fish were scattered and scarce. William and Ragna's catches had stayed decent because they had learned to work together, to read the lake's moods and adjust their approach. But other fishermen, both human and orc, were struggling. And when people struggled, they looked for someone to blame. They are saying you are cursing the lake, Marcus told William one evening, stopping him on the path to his cottage. The orc girl especially. People say orcs bring bad luck to water. That is superstitious nonsense, maybe. But superstitious nonsense can turn into real trouble when people are hungry and angry. Marcus looked genuinely worried. Be careful, William, and maybe stay off the lake for a while, at least until the tensions ease. William thanked him but ignored the advice. The next morning he was at the lake before dawn as usual, and so was Ragna. "My Uncle Gregor cornered me last night," she said as she climbed into the boat. "He says I should stop fishing entirely because I am making the humans angry, and angry humans are dangerous." Marcus said the same thing, more or less. They sat in the barely floating boat, the water calm and dark around them, the first hints of sunrise coloring the eastern sky. "Are we being stupid?" Ragna asked. "Maybe we should wait until things calm down." William thought about it, about the sensible thing to do. Then he thought about the past 2 months, about mornings on the lake and afternoons in the cove, about the way Ragna laughed when he told stories about his father's fishing mishaps, about how she had learned to swim despite her fear, about how he had started to heal from his grief because she had climbed into his boat and made being alone impossible. "I do not want to wait," he said. "I want to fish with you, and if people have a problem with that, they can take it up with us directly instead of whispering behind our backs." Ragna grinned, fierce and bright. "Then we fish." They paddled out to their favorite spot in the North Cove as the sun rose, burning off the mist. The water was choppy, there was wind coming from the south, warm air that smelled like rain. William noted the clouds building on the horizon but did not think much of it. Autumn storms were common, but they usually blew through quickly. They fished for 2 hours, the catches good, the conversation easy. Then the wind shifted, coming from the west now, colder and harder. "We should head back," Ragna said, looking at the sky. The clouds had built into a dark wall, moving fast. "Agreed." William pulled in his line and grabbed his paddle. They were halfway to shore when the storm hit. It came on with terrifying speed, the wind going from steady to howling in moments, the waves rising from chop to whitecaps to rolling swells that lifted the little boat and dropped it sickeningly. Rain lashed down in sheets, cold and blinding. "Bail!" William shouted over the wind, but Ragna was already scooping water as fast as she could. The boat was taking on water from the rain and the waves, and the repairs they had made were straining under the assault. They paddled desperately, trying to reach shore, but the wind kept pushing them back. A wave hit broadside and the boat tilted, water pouring over the edge. William threw his weight to counter and Ragna did the same, but it was too much, the boat too small, the water too angry. "We are going to capsize." Ragna yelled, and there was real fear in her voice, the same fear William felt clawing up his own throat. "Hold on to the boat." He barely got the words out before another wave hit, bigger than the others, and the boat went over. The cold water closed over William's head, and for a disorienting second he did not know which way was up. Then his head broke the surface and he gasped, looking around frantically. "Ragna!" She surfaced a few feet away, coughing, her hand locked on the overturned hull. "I am here." The boat was upside down but still floating, barely. Their fishing gear was gone, scattered in the waves. The shore seemed impossibly far and the storm was still raging. "Can you make it to shore?" William swam to her side, grabbing the boat with one hand. "I do not know." She was breathing fast, her eyes wide. "William, I cannot, the water is too deep. I cannot touch bottom, look at me." He grabbed her shoulder, making her focus. "You can swim. I have seen you swim. You know how to do this." "Not in this, not in a storm." Her voice cracked with panic. The boat lurched under a wave, and William knew they could not stay here. The hull would not support them for long, and the waves were pushing them farther from shore, out toward the deep water where the lake was coldest and most dangerous, where his father had drowned. The thought was like ice water in his veins, but it also brought a strange clarity. He had spent 3 months avoiding this, avoiding the lake's dangers, patching a broken boat instead of facing his fear. But now there was no avoiding it. The lake was here, it was deadly, and the woman he cared about was terrified in water over her head. "We are going to swim together," William said, forcing his voice to be calm. I will stay right beside you. We will take it slow and steady, just like in the cove. You can do this, Ragna. What if I cannot? Then I will help you, but you can. I know you can. He released the boat, treading water, and held out his hand. Trust me. Ragna stared at him, rain streaming down her face, and for a terrible moment he thought she would refuse, would cling to the sinking boat until they both went down. Then she let go of the hull and took his hand. Together, she said, they swam. It was the longest swim of William's life. The waves fought them, the rain blinded them, and the cold sapped their strength with every stroke. But Ragna kept swimming, her form rougher than in the calm cove but still effective, and William stayed beside her, calling encouragement when she faltered, adjusting their course when the wind pushed them off. His feet touched bottom after what felt like hours but was probably only 10 minutes. Ragna touched down a moment later, and they stumbled together through the shallows, collapsing on the shore just as a fresh gust of wind and rain swept over them. They lay there, breathing hard, water streaming off them, alive. We made it, Ragna said, her voice shaking. We did not drown. William started to laugh, half hysteria, half relief. We did not. The boat did probably, but we did not. Ragna laughed too, and then she was crying, and then they were holding each other on the muddy shore while the storm raged overhead, two fools who had nearly died for fish and stubbornness and each other. I was so afraid, Ragna said against his shoulder. The whole time I thought I was going to drown, and all I could think was that I wished I had told you. She stopped, pulling back to look at him. Told me what? That I love you. The words tumbled out, raw and honest. I know it is complicated and probably stupid, and our families will hate it, but I love you, William, and I could not die without saying it. William cupped her face in his hands, this fierce, brave, wonderful woman who had climbed into his sinking boat and his life with equal determination. I love you too. I think I have since you said scoot over, like you had every right to be there. He kissed her, tasting rain and lake water and something sweeter, and she kissed him back, her arms wrapping around him like she would never let go. The storm blew itself out eventually, and they made their way to William's cottage because it was closer. He stoked the fire, found dry clothes for both of them. His spare shirt hung huge on Ragna, and the sight made him smile, and made hot tea while she sat wrapped in blankets, still shivering. We lost everything, she said, watching the fire. The boat, the gear, today's catch, all of it gone. I know. William handed her a cup of tea and sat beside her. But we are alive, and I know where the boat sank. When the storm clears, we might be able to salvage some of the gear. We need a new boat. We need a lot of things. He took her hand, lacing their fingers together. But first we need to decide what we are doing, about us. Ragna leaned against his shoulder. I know what I want. I want to be with you. I want to fish with you and live with you and build a life with you, even if that means both our communities hate us. I want that too. William kissed the top of her head. But it will not be easy. Nothing worthwhile is easy. You taught me that when you made me learn to swim. She turned her face up to his. I was terrified, but I learned because you believed I could. We can do this too. They sat together as the storm faded and evening came on, planning and hoping and holding each other against whatever troubles would come. The trouble came quickly. When Ragna did not return to Stonewater that night, her brother Rolf came looking for her. He found her at William's cottage, and the scene that followed was loud and ugly. Rolf accused William of taking advantage of Ragna, of seducing her for some nefarious purpose. He demanded she come home immediately. Ragna refused. I am an adult, Rolf. I make my own choices, and I choose to be with William. He is human. You cannot trust him. I trust him with my life. He saved me in the storm today when I nearly drowned. You nearly drowned because you were out on the lake with him in the first place. Rolf's face was twisted with anger and fear. Come home, Ragna, please, before this gets worse. I am home. She stood firm, her hand in William's. This is where I want to be. Rolf left, and they both knew he would return with reinforcements. Sure enough, the next morning brought Ragna's mother and uncle, then a delegation from Stonewater's council, all trying to convince her to leave, to see reason, to stop this madness before it brought disaster to both communities. Millbank's response was no better. Marcus and 2 other council members came to William's door with similar demands. The tensions between the villages were rising, they said. Fights had broken out at the market where human and orc merchants traded. Someone had vandalized the boundary stones that marked the territories. If William and Ragna persisted in this relationship, it could lead to real violence. Then people need to control themselves, William said coldly. Ragna and I have done nothing wrong. We are hurting no one. You are hurting the peace, Marcus said. Is she really worth that? William looked at Ragna, standing beside him with her chin up and her hand in his, and knew the answer with absolute certainty. Yes, she is worth everything. The delegations left unsatisfied, and William and Ragna were left alone in an increasingly hostile world. We cannot hide in your cottage forever, Ragna said that evening, watching the sunset through the window. We need to work to earn money, and we need a boat. I know. William had been thinking about this all day. I have some savings, not enough for a proper boat, but enough for materials if we build one ourselves. Can you build a boat? My father was a boatwright. I watched him build a dozen boats over the years. I know the basics. He pulled out paper and started sketching. It does not need to be fancy, just sturdy and big enough for 2 people to fish comfortably. Ragna looked over his shoulder at the design taking shape. How long would it take? A month, maybe 6 weeks if we work every day. We would need to work here on my land where we have some privacy. And money to live on while we build. I can sell some things. Tools I do not need, some of my father's fishing gear that survived. William put down the pencil and turned to face her. It will be tight, Ragna. We might go hungry, and we will be even more isolated than we are now. But at the end we will have a boat, our boat built by us together, she smiled. I like that idea. They started the next day. Building the boat became their world. William taught Ragna the skills his father had taught him. How to select and bend the ribs, how to plane the planks to fit seamlessly, how to seal the joints so water could not penetrate. They worked from dawn until dark, their hands blistered and aching, their backs sore, but the boat took shape slowly and surely. It was good work, honest work, and it gave them something to focus on besides the isolation. Because they were isolated now, truly. Millbank had decided William had betrayed them by choosing an orc over his own people, and Stonewater viewed Ragna as a traitor who had abandoned her community for a human. The few friends who might have supported them were too afraid of social consequences to visit openly. You regret it? Ragna asked one evening, running her hand along the smooth curve of the boat's prow. Choosing this, choosing me. William came to stand beside her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. Never, do you? No, but I wish it were easier. So do I. He rested his chin on top of her head. But when this boat is done, when we can fish again and earn our way, people will see we are not going anywhere. Eventually they will have to accept it. Do you really believe that? I have to believe it. The alternative is too depressing. As the boat neared completion, William began teaching Ragna more advanced swimming in the evenings, using the cove again despite the cooler autumn temperatures. She had survived the storm, but the experience had shaken her confidence. She needed to rebuild it to know she could handle the water without panic. You are stronger now than before the storm, William told her as she swam laps in the deepening twilight. You know what it feels like to fight the water and win. I did not win. You saved me. I helped you. But you swam, Ragna. You kept going when you were terrified and exhausted. That was all you. He waded out to meet her as she reached the shallows. The lake does not scare you as much anymore, does it? She considered this, treading water. No, I respect it more, maybe. I understand it is dangerous, but I am not frozen by fear anymore. She swam to him, wrapped her arms around his neck. Thank you for teaching me, for believing I could learn. Thank you for climbing into my boat, for staying even when it was hard. They kissed in the darkening water, and William thought about his father, about how the lake gave and took, about how he had lost one family to these waters but found a new one in them as well. The boat was finished in early November, just as the first serious cold set in. She was beautiful, 15 feet of sturdy oak and pine, wide enough for 2 people to fish comfortably, with good clean lines and a flat bottom perfect for lake fishing. They had not named her yet, waiting until she was launched. The launch was supposed to be a private affair, just the 2 of them blessing the boat and taking her out for the first time. But word spread somehow, and when William and Ragna arrived at the shore just after dawn, there were people waiting, not everyone from both villages, but enough. Marcus was there from Millbank, and Ragna's mother and brother from Stonewater, and a scattering of others from both communities. They stood in separate clusters on opposite sides of the shore, watching. Ignore them, Ragna said quietly, though her hand tightened in his. This is for us. They carried the boat to the water, and William said the traditional blessing his father had taught him, asking the lake to be kind to the vessel and her crew. Then Ragna added her own words, a prayer in the orc tongue that William did not understand, but that sounded beautiful anyway. They launched the boat, and she floated perfectly, riding high and steady in the calm morning water. William helped Ragna aboard, then climbed in himself, and for the first time in months they sat in a boat with actual space between them, with room to move and cast without tangling. She is perfect, Ragna said, running her hands along the new wood. She feels solid, safe, she is ours. William picked up one of the new paddles they had made. Where do you want to go? Everywhere. But today, let's just go to our spot in the North Cove. Let's fish together in our boat, and let everyone see that we are still here. They paddled out, and the boat moved like a dream, smooth and responsive. Behind them on the shore, William could feel the watchers, the judgment, but out here on the water it did not matter. This was their place, their element, the lake that had taken so much and given them each other. They fished until noon, their catches excellent, the boat performing beautifully. When they returned to shore, most of the watchers had gone, but Marcus remained from Millbank and Ragna's mother from Stonewater. William and Ragna pulled the boat up onto the sand and began sorting their catch. Finally, Marcus approached. "That is fine work," he said, nodding at the boat. "Your father would be proud of the craftsmanship." "Thank you." William waited, knowing there was more. The council has been talking. Some people are still angry, but others are starting to think we were too harsh. Marcus glanced at Ragna, who met his gaze steadily. "A few of the younger fishermen are asking if you would be willing to teach them your techniques. They have noticed your catches stay good even in a poor season." "Because we work together," Ragna said. "Because we share knowledge instead of hoarding it." "Yes." "Well," Marcus looked uncomfortable. "The point is, people are willing to tolerate this partnership if it benefits the community. That is not acceptance, but it is a start." He left, and Ragna's mother approached next. She was a tall orc woman with iron-gray hair and Ragna's same amber eyes. "Mother," Ragna said carefully. "The boat is well built," her mother said. "Strong. You did good work. William did most of it. He learned from his father, but you helped." Her mother looked at William for the first time, really looked, and he met her gaze without flinching. "You taught my daughter to swim." I did. She could have died in that storm, but she did not because you taught her to survive the water. Ragna's mother was quiet for a long moment. I do not understand this, what you have together. It scares me because humans have hurt our family before. But Ragna is alive and happy, and that matters more than my fear. Ragna's eyes filled with tears. Mother, I am not giving my blessing, not yet, but I am not forbidding it either. She turned to her daughter. Come visit sometimes. Let me see that you are well, that is all I ask. I will. I promise. Her mother nodded and left, and Ragna wiped her eyes, laughing shakily. That went better than I expected. Much better. William pulled her close. We are going to be all right. I know. We have each other and we have our boat, and that is enough. They named the boat Steady Promise, for the commitment they had made to each other and the life they were building. Through the winter they fished whenever the weather allowed, building their reputation as skilled partners who understood the lake better than most. The catches they sold brought enough money to keep them fed and warm, and slowly, grudgingly, both communities began to accept their presence. It helped that they were generous with their knowledge. When younger fishermen asked about techniques, William and Ragna shared freely. When an early ice storm damaged several boats in Stonewater, they helped with repairs, William teaching the Orc boatwrights some of his father's methods. When Millbank's dock needed replacing, Ragna volunteered her labor alongside William. They were proving themselves useful, reliable, and impossible to ignore. By spring, the outright hostility had faded into something more like resigned tolerance. People still whispered and some still disapproved, but William and Ragna could walk through either village without fearing violence, could sell their fish without being cheated, could exist in their odd little partnership without constant harassment. It is not perfect, Ragna said one evening as they sat on the shore, watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and red, but it is better than it was. Better is enough. William kissed her temple. Better is what we make of it. They had moved into William's cottage together over the winter, and people had talked about that too, but less than expected. The cottage was small but comfortable, and they had made it their own, filling it with fishing gear and half-finished boat projects and the comfortable mess of two people building a life together. On a warm evening in late spring, as they sat on the small porch watching the stars come out over the lake, William said, "Marry me." Ragna turned to look at him, her eyes wide. "What? Marry me? Be my wife? Let's make this official in every way that matters." He took her hand, his heart pounding. "I love you, Ragna. I want to spend the rest of my life fishing with you and building boats with you and swimming in that cove with you. I want children with you someday if you want them. I want to grow old with you and watch the lake change through the seasons, year after year. Marry me." Ragna's eyes were shining. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. He kissed her, and she kissed him back, and the lake whispered against the shore like a blessing. The wedding was a complicated affair. Neither Millbank nor Stonewater had a tradition for human-orc marriages, because they were so rare. So William and Ragna made up their own ceremony, blending elements from both cultures. They held it on the shore of the lake at dawn, with the Steady Promise floating nearby as witness. Ragna's mother came, and her brother Rolf, still disapproving but willing to be present. Marcus came from Millbank, and a handful of other fishermen who had worked with them over the winter. It was a small gathering, but it was enough. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising partnership and love, honoring the lake that had brought them together and the boat that had kept them afloat. William's voice shook when he said, "You climbed into my sinking boat when you had no reason to trust me, and you have been climbing into my life ever since, making everything better and braver and more beautiful. I will love you until the lake runs dry and beyond." Ragna's voice was steady when she answered. "You taught me to swim when I was afraid, and you have been teaching me to be brave in every way that matters ever since. I will love you until the mountains fall, and longer." They sealed it with a kiss as the sun rose over the water, and the small gathering cheered, and William thought his father would have liked this, would have approved of this strange, fierce woman who loved the lake as much as William did. The feast afterward was held on neutral ground, a meadow halfway between the two villages. Both communities contributed food, and if the humans and orcs sat in mostly separate groups, at least they sat in the same meadow, sharing the same celebration. It was progress. Late in the evening, as the party was winding down, Ragna's mother pulled William aside. "Take care of her," she said. "She acts tough, but she has a tender heart. I know I will. And when you have children, bring them to visit me. I want to know my grandchildren, even if they are half human." William's throat tightened. "We will, I promise." She nodded and left, and William returned to Ragna's side, pulling her close. "What did my mother say to you? That she wants to meet our children someday?" Ragna smiled. "Someday, when we are ready." "When we are ready," William agreed. They danced as the stars came out, and the lake reflected the firelight. And William thought about the morning Ragna had climbed into his barely floating boat and changed his life forever. The years that followed were good ones. William and Ragna became the most successful fishing partnership on the lake, not because they had secret techniques, but because they worked harder and smarter than most, and because they genuinely enjoyed working together. They built boats during the off-season, beautiful sturdy vessels that sold to fishermen from both villages and beyond. They taught swimming lessons to anyone who wanted to learn, humans and orcs alike, refusing payment, but accepting trade for goods they needed. William never forgot how he had nearly lost Ragna to the water, and he was determined that anyone who made their living on the lake should know how to survive it. 3 years after their wedding, Ragna told William she was pregnant. They sat together in the steady promise, floating in their favorite spot in the North Cove, and she took his hand and placed it on her still flat belly. "There is a baby, our baby." William could not speak for a moment, overwhelmed. Then he pulled her close and held her, feeling tears on his cheeks. "We are going to be parents. We are going to be terrible at it, probably, but we will figure it out together like we figure out everything." Their son was born in early spring, a healthy baby with green-tinted skin a shade lighter than Ragna's, tiny tusks just visible beneath his upper lip, and his father's dark hair. They named him Easton, and he was perfect. Ragna's mother cried when she met him, holding her grandson with such tenderness that Ragna cried too. "He is beautiful. You have made a beautiful baby." Marcus visited as well, bringing a carved wooden fish as a gift. "He looks strong. He will be a good fisherman someday, I think." Rowan was 2 when his brother Ivan was born, and the cottage suddenly felt very full. William built an addition, and Ragna's brother Rolf helped, the 2 men working together with the careful politeness of people learning to be family. "You have done well for yourself," Rolf admitted one afternoon, nailing boards while William measured. "I did not think a human would treat my sister right, but you have proven me wrong. I am glad you approve. Finally." William said it with a smile, and Rolf actually smiled back. By the time their daughter Talia was born 3 years later, the idea of a human orc family was no longer shocking in either Millbank or Stonewater. There were a few other mixed couples now, young people who had seen William and Ragna make it work and decided to try themselves. "We started something," Ragna said one evening, nursing Talia while Rowan and Ivan played with toy boats near the hearth. "We changed things. We just loved each other. Other people did the changing." William sat beside her, watching their children, feeling the deep contentment of a life well built. But I am glad we did. The children grew up on the lake, learning to swim almost as soon as they could walk, learning to fish and build boats and navigate the social complexities of being neither fully human nor fully orc, but something new. Rowan had his mother's amber eyes and his father's steady patience. Ivan had William's dark coloring and Ragna's fierce determination. Talia, the youngest, had green skin like her mother but her father's smile, and a love of the water that surpassed both her brothers. When Rowan was 15, he built his first boat with William's guidance, a sleek fishing skiff that he took out alone for the first time on a calm summer morning. William and Ragna watched from the shore, holding hands. "He is so young," Ragna said. "He is the age I was when my father started letting me fish alone. He knows what he is doing." "I know, but he is still my baby." William squeezed her hand. "They all are, but we raised them right. They will be fine." Rowan returned safely, his boat full of fish and his face glowing with pride. "I did it. I caught all of these myself." That night, the whole family celebrated, and William looked around the table at his wife and children, at this impossible family built on a foundation of a sinking boat and stubborn love, and thought about how lucky he was. The lake had taken his father, had nearly taken Ragna, had threatened to take everything. But it had also given him this: a partner who challenged and supported him, children who were brave and kind, a life that mattered. Years later, when William and Ragna were old and gray, they still fished together most mornings, taking the steady promise out to their favorite spots. The boat was old now, patched and repaired many times, but she still floated true. Like their marriage, William thought. Patched and weathered, but still sound. "You remember the first morning?" Ragna asked one misty dawn, baiting her hook with the same efficient movements she had used for 40 years. "When I climbed into your terrible boat, I remember thinking you were crazy. The boat barely floated with just me in it, and yet I climbed in anyway." She cast her line out into the water. "Best decision I ever made." "Second best." William cast his own line. "The best was saying yes when I asked you to marry me." "That is fair." She smiled at him, her face lined with age but her eyes still the same warm amber. "We have had a good life, William. We have. We really have." They fished in comfortable silence as the sun rose over the lake. Two old fishermen who had built something lasting from nothing more than stubbornness and hope, and a one-person boat that barely floated. On shore, their grandchildren were arriving, Rowan's children and Ivan's and Talia's, a whole crowd of young people with human and orc features blended in different combinations, all of them gathering for the annual fishing competition that had become a family tradition. Rowan was there too, graying now himself, and his brothers and sister, all of them with families of their own. William and Ragna paddled back to join them, and the shore erupted in greetings and laughter. The children ran into the water to help pull the steady promise up onto the sand, and William climbed out carefully, his joints not as flexible as they once were, then turned to help Ragna. "Thank you," she said, taking his hand. "Always." They stood on the shore of the lake that had brought them together, surrounded by the family they had made. And William thought about the scared, lonely young man he had been, bailing water from a sinking boat on a misty morning. He thought about the brave orc woman who had said "scoot over" and changed his life. "I love you," he told Ragna, like he had every day for more than 40 years. "I love you too," she answered like she always did. The fishing competition began, and the lake was full of boats, the shore full of laughter, and William Easton stood with his wife's hand in his and knew that this, all of this, was exactly what happiness looked like. The sun climbed higher, burning off the mist, and the water sparkled like it held 1,000 promises. The steady promise rested on the sand, old but sound, a testament to the life built by two people who had refused to let fear or prejudice or a barely floating boat stop them from finding each other. And on the lake, the boats of their children and grandchildren cast long shadows, a new generation learning the waters, carrying forward the legacy of partnership and love that had started with one simple, stubborn act, making room in a too small boat for the person who would become everything. William watched them fish, watched Ragna laugh at something their eldest granddaughter said, and felt the deep peace of a life fully lived. The lake had given and taken, had tested and taught, and in the end it had given more than it took. He had lost a father to these waters, but he had found a wife, a family, a purpose. He had learned that the things worth having were worth fighting for, worth building slowly and carefully, worth protecting against all odds. As the afternoon lengthened and the fishing competition continued, William sat beside Ragna on a driftwood log, their fingers intertwined, watching their family enjoy the lake that had shaped both their lives. The steady promise sat nearby, ready for tomorrow's fishing, still floating after all these years, still floating like their love, still steady like their promise. And when the sun finally set over the lake, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber the color of Ragna's eyes, William Easton knew he would not change a single thing about the life they had built together. Starting from that misty morning when an orc girl had climbed into his one-person fishing boat, and it had barely floated, but they had made it work anyway. They had made everything work together, and that was more than enough. That was everything.